Good morning, Tarana. Thank you so much for joining us this morning for the Sexual Assault Center Safe City Breakfast. We are honored to have you here.
Thank you for having me. I'm so glad to be joining, even virtually, to be back in Nashville.
For every survivor, their journey is completely different. Some people, are willing to say Me Too publicly. Some people do it privately and seek help in other ways. Do you think it helps, as you did, just putting it down on paper, whether you are sharing it with the world or just maybe to get your thoughts out to yourself?
Yeah, I say this to survivors all of the time. It is not as important to tell people your story as it is to tell yourself your story. Important person, um, the most important person you have to tell your story to is yourself. So whether you whisper it in your pillow, write it in your journal, tell it to yourself in your mirror, it is really important to get it out of your body.
When the Me Too movement started, I think a lot of people felt it was a women's movement. Obviously and unfortunately, sexual assault does not discriminate. It impacts everyone. Is that something that you have really seen?
We're coming up on the 5th anniversary, believe it or not. This October will make 5 years since the hashtag went viral. And I think if I can point out one of our biggest challenges has been making it really inclusive for everybody across the gender spectrum. And I think, unfortunately, men don't see themselves as survivors in this movement. They only see themselves as perpetrators or allies, but not. I don't think they have found a place for themselves as survivors in this movement. And part of that is because women are so largely affected by sexual violence. But we don't hear the statistics when we run them down so quickly. When you talk about child sexual abuse, the statistics run together. It's, 1 in 5 girls and 1 in 6 boys. They run right in tandem. And I think when people talk about what's next for this movement, what's next is that we have to do a much better job of opening up space for men to see themselves. Their first role in this movement is as survivors. Before we talk about what men have to do to end sexual violence, we have to talk about what we have to do to find space for men to be survivors. Where can they put their stories down? Where can they find space for healing, right? Because for a lot of reasons, because that is also a part of ending sexual violence.
Sexual Assault Center here, they've made it a really big mission to let people know this does impact everyone and they are there for everyone. Why do you think it's so important to have organizations like this in a community?
They're invaluable. First of all, this is a topic that people don't even want to talk about. This is a subject that people don't see as a social justice issue. And even when they see it from the service side of things, it's individualized. We don't look at this as something that we have to work on or deal with collectively. And so when we lose organizations such as this, then we lose resources in our communities for survivors to turn to, right? Then we're left with the hospital or law enforcement. And they will carve out services to support survivors. We all know who work in this field that they are ill-equipped. And that is when you only make sexual violence a part of the work that you do, and you don't have people who are 100% full-time focused on supporting survivors, then we get lost. We get tossed in, just like we do across the field, right? We always get tossed in or couched in other things. And so when people run down the list, we're somewhere lost on the list. And when we're somewhere lost on the list, that means the survivors get somewhere lost. So we have to have people, we have to have services, organizations, communities, movements that are 100% focused on this issue.
Yeah, and I love what you say about it being exclusive and it being so different for each person in their journey through this, because I think saying Me Too is such an important part, but it's really just the first step when it comes to this. And after that, it's really up to the person and their journey specific to them.
Absolutely. It is, I've said this before, that Me Too is a conversation starter, or it's the whole conversation. It is not where you end, it's where you begin, right? It is absolutely so much that has to happen after, and you can't help it. Even if you wanted to just say it and stop, you can't help it because you've already unearthed a thing that's been waiting to come forward. And so that's why it's our jobs, those of us who work in this field, to be prepared. You know, when Me Too went viral, I was so scared, quite frankly, of what do we do now? Because we have watched all of these tops come off of these bottles, and there's just not enough. I know about how under-resourced we are in the field. I knew that there were not just not enough people, quite frankly, bodies, literal people working across this country. There's not enough resources that were ready to scramble and meet the needs of 12 million people just like that, who now were, you know, suddenly activated. And that's why it's just, we're still trying to scramble to meet the needs of what was, you know, sort of the light switch that was turned on 5 years ago. But organizations like yours have been doing an amazing job of meeting that need.
And I think the biggest thing I've learned since, you know, being a member of the Sexual Assault Center is that I've talked with many survivors, and they say, you know, the process sort of never ends. You know, maybe I need 5 years from now to go back and just sit in and sit on counseling or, you know, whatever it may be for that person. I know there's a number of survivors attending the breakfast. So what would be your message to them?
If you are a survivor, you know this already, that healing is not linear, that this is an ongoing process that ebbs and flows. You know, I've told this story before, and I just told it the other day when I was at an event that I will be 49 this year. I was first assaulted at 7 years old, right? So we are talking 42 years of survival. And many of those years I've been thriving, not just surviving, right? Because I worked really hard at trying to figure out how to do that and to build tools to do that. And when Me Too went viral, I was thrust into a life that I did not understand. I had mastered being a private survivor, right? A private citizen and a private survivor. I had no idea how to be a public survivor. I knew how to tell my story. I knew how to own my story. I knew how to survive. I knew how to thrive. And life as a public survivor was a very new world for me. And the tools that I had built for myself didn't work anymore. The survival skills, all of those things, they didn't work. And I did not know what to do. And at the height of all of this visibility, those things broke down for me. And I found myself having to scramble to figure out how to find my center.
And I want to ask it in the spirit of Sexual Assault Awareness Month, which is this month. Many people may be thinking, how can I support, you know, the Me Too movement, organizations like the Sexual Assault Center? What's your recommendation?
Well, there's always so many ways to support. Obviously, we're always fundraising. Obviously, we're always looking for people to come and monetarily support our organizations, because we're always underfunded and always under-resourced. So if you want to help our organizations, we need work around shifting how people think about sexual violence. You need to come and learn about the work that we're doing. I'm sure you all need volunteers and you need people to come to learn. But so volunteering is not just about coming and, you know, lifting a hand in the organization. It's about learning and understanding the actual day-to-day work that happens in the organization, so that you become an ambassador for what we do. And you go out into the world and say, you know, this is not just about like cancel culture or whatever you think it is. This is really about supporting individual people whose lives have been ripped apart by this horrible thing this unimaginable thing. This thing that you personally can't really understand until you see how it affects a person's life.
Every time I hear you talk, it is so inspiring, and you are incredible. I know that everyone listening is probably inspired and is learning a lot. Is there any message or last thought you really want to drive home or make sure that the people hear?
I just hope, I'm glad I think the people in the audience are here for a reason, because they support this work. And I'm just thankful for that. I'm thankful that every year that goes by that we still have people who support this work. I've said for a long time that when all the quiet, when it gets quiet and the cameras stop coming and the headlines stop, becoming who's going to get Me Too next and all the rest of that, it's the people who still show up to the breakfasts and the people who still come out to support. These are the same people who were here 6 years ago, right? And 7 years ago, who we really rely on. This is what the movement is built upon. And I'm just grateful that these are the people who still show up. And some of you showed up because of the movement, and you'll be the ones that we gained because of the movement and who are still here. I'm really grateful for, and I'm thankful for. We're coming up on 5 years, and I think after this year, who's still left will be the people who will build upon and keep building upon. And so we have a lot of stuff planned this year. I hope people will pay attention and come out and join us. We really plan on making a lot of noise and letting people know that this is indeed a movement, and movement is made of people, and you are the people that we're talking about when we say that. So we look forward to seeing you all in the streets of Nashville or DC or wherever it is that you show up, to let the world know that we are more than just a hashtag. That is our theme for this year. And I know you all understand what I mean when I say that. So thank you for having me, Nashville. I appreciate all the love that I get when I come through Tennessee.
And Tarana, our next speaker this morning is actually actor Jonathan Scheck, who was inspired by the Me Too movement to come forward and share his story publicly. Is there any message that you have for Jonathan before he joins us here on stage?
I'm always, and that's probably why the name is for men, but I'm always so moved when I hear stories like that, particularly, from men, because of what I was saying earlier. It's just so inspiring, and it always makes me feel like, yes, because I know it's gonna inspire or has inspired other people, particularly men or people who don't identify as women, to come forward. I want to say thank you, Jonathan. I'm so, I know it takes a lot to come forward, particularly when you're in the public eye. So I'm just, proud, if I can say that you were able to do that. And I'm really, I'm moved that if I had any part to play in that, I'm just really moved to hear that. So thank you.